Hi everyone. Just a quick spontaneous kind of video today on the topic of, I guess, borrowing Gabor Mate's title, The Myth of Normal. I'm in a bit of a battle in my own soul at the moment between my false beliefs versus God's truth about everything, particularly around emotions. And then I came across a film yesterday. Well, no, a film came across my path. It's my law of attraction, called The Luckiest Girl Alive. It's the story of a woman 20 years after she was gang raped at a school party, and how she's coped with that, and the consequences of how she's so-called coped with that event. She has a very successful life. She's engaged to a wealthy, nice guy. On the surface, everything looks shiny. Um, but the film plays out where we actually get to hear her real thoughts and feelings about things. So it really shows the facade she's presenting and what's really going on inside her. Um, I won't say too much else about the film, but it's just really interesting watch. It's got lots of layers in it for me. But she goes through this journey in the film where it's very clear the past is still hugely prominent in her life. She has outbursts of rage, and we get to hear more details of the story and the consequences of not speaking up truthfully, of not grieving over what's happened to you, and also of what being suppressed, um, what the kind of consequences and effects are of all those things. So, she has a very unpleasant mother who doesn't want to know how she's feeling. It's all very much about the mother. She's quite narcissistic. And when she finds out about what's happened to her daughter, she blames the daughter. She doesn't believe her version of events. And so that really impacts how this young woman copes with it. And the film has a sort of story of turnaround of how things change, how she eventually faces the truth, and how she becomes empowered at the end of the film. And is in a better place than she was at the start of it. But I sat and reflected afterwards, because I could relate to that creation hugely of a facade to help cope with trauma, of being a chameleon, of becoming the person that everyone around you wants to be. So depending on who you're with, you're a different person, and exactly what she did, and what many of us do. But what I notice in pretty much all films that deal with trauma, life-changing events, is you never see anyone like really grieving and lamenting. You you see them maybe going to therapist and talking, getting some help. Or the other favorite thing in films is they'll join a particular group. It becomes life affirming for them, and they start to change things and make different choices to improve their life. So you do see those things in films, and it all looks like it's some kind of um, not going to say a quick fix, but a quickish fix to a lot of pain. But you never see anyone grieving. So I was just thinking, like, I've been in that movie where I lived through facade, my false beliefs battling against God's truth right now. So all these false beliefs I have about um, what I should do with the bits of information I have about the trauma in my childhood, and how I should deal with emotions, the false beliefs I have about emotions, and all the things that have kept me really stuck. But also, um, when you get very hurt as a child, there's this awful sense of powerlessness that um, we we kind of sit with, a sense of powerlessness and injustice. And I think, you could see that in the movie. That's what she was feeling, and her way is to get power, apart from the facade, was like a lot of us do, which is to get angry, to use rage and anger to feel powerful. And so the other aspect of these films I notice is, even though they do demonstrate how evil rage can become, and what you can do in that sense of rage, because there's some really awful events that happen in the film, but also there's still this other feeling of like this rage is justified, um, or the actions that you take in that rage is justified. So, I mean, she had reason to be angry about what happened to her. She had reasons, like we all do, to feel a deep sense of injustice about what's happened to us. Um, but in the world's view of things, we then can use that to justify raging at others. So, you know, it's that thing of eye for an eye. Well, you hurt me, I'll hurt you. But what I've noticed in myself is I'm not hurting the people that hurt me. I'm actually hurting innocent people around me by not softening to the grief that's inside me. I'm so busy trying to hold on, and so we become so kind of rigid in wanting to not feel how terrible we were made to feel and by whom as a child, that we defend ourselves and attack others in that space. And it's so damaging. Um, and there's even a bit at the end of the film where she's, you know, she's feeling better, she's empowered, and something happens in the street, and she yells at this woman, and then she walks off smiling because she's, you know, stood up for herself. But that's not standing up for yourself, yelling at someone. It's aggression. It's not assertiveness. And so I think this is where our lines get blurred. And so I just feel really that it's really important for us to think, and it's really important for me to think right now, is how much hurt we cause others just to avoid feeling the grief and um, deep, deep grief that we need to feel about how terrible we were told we were as children, or projected that we were, and by whom. It's devastating that the cause of our beliefs about ourselves, which are so negative, are come from our parents, the people that should accept and love and be interested in us and delight in us. And so it's heartbreaking and devastating. Um, and you know, I've got a lot of stuff to deal with around my mum, and I'm just refusing to go there at the moment with the grief. And so, what I'm finding myself doing, particularly this in recent years, because obviously that suppression of all that grief builds up, and you have to work even harder to suppress it. Actually, as you get older, you have to work even harder. You either have to create more addictions, you have to create more facade, and then you start just getting really, you don't want to feel your fear because your fears have grown, and you get more angry, and I start attacking, and we start attacking innocent people. So, and this particularly affects my relationships with women, where I kind of almost feel like I want to attack them before they attack me. It's like, um, I can't bear for you to make me feel terrible, so I'll just do whatever I need to stop that happening, to stop any attack, to stop any judgment, to stop you triggering my fear. I'll just do whatever. And that can be done in very sort of passive aggressive ways, or more overtly aggressive ways. But it's there, and I can feel the 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 anger that comes up in me, and then I just go la 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 and put on a facade and pretend it's not there. And this is what's happening everywhere, and it's not okay that we do this, and it's keeping us really stuck. So you know, Jesus has been saying through the divine truth teachings in so many talks about, we really don't know, the world's view of things is so wrong. The world's view of love, the world's view of what is normal, is so wrong and so toxic, um, and yet we accept it as reality, and actually we have no idea of what reality is like from God's perspective, how God has created things to be the potential of us. You know, we're so busy ignoring our hurt child, and covering up with so many layers that we ignore. We cause so much harm to each other and to ourselves, because obviously you can be angry, and which is something I do, you take it out on yourself, and it's not good. And so it was just interesting to me to take note last night, looking at all the movies I've watched where it's not that they don't deal with real issues in the movies, and it's not that they don't demonstrate to some degree the pain that's caused in that place to the person themselves or those around them. They do that. But what they do is miss this massive, huge part of healing, the part that actually clears the causal emotion from our soul, that gets rid of all that pain, which is the grief. Um, and you never really see someone going through grief. You see them trying to reclaim their power in different ways, and yes, find themselves in different ways. But there's almost like a skipping over, like they're in this terrible place. They do a few little things, maybe a few therapy sessions, or they change their job, or they do whatever. And there are some emotions involved in some of these movies, but it's sort of it's skipping over that huge amount of grief that we need to feel. Um, as Adam Young describes it in The Place We Find Ourselves podcast, this deep lamenting that we need to do. Um, and yeah, it just skips over. And so it just really showed me and demonstrated to me that my false beliefs are confirmed by the world around me. Whether that's when I'm out shopping, whether that's in a movie or a TV program, or whether that's in music, it confirms we're confirming our false beliefs all the time instead of challenging them. And I can feel my lungs, my throat, my head sometimes just feels so full of sadness, and I can't get it out. I can cry for a short time, but I can't get it out yet because this walls come up, this defenses come up, these false beliefs come up, this lack of permission. And for some of us, we've had that lack of permission, that suppression has been really intense, and it's been too dangerous to express ourselves. But when you get to my age, you've really got to start trying something else, because not just me, but many of us, we're such evidence that all these other methods don't work. This skipping over, this creating facades, this kind of like affirmations, or whatever it is you're doing to psychologically or mentally make yourself feel better. It's not that they don't, maybe sometimes don't create small shifts and create different choices, but they don't deal with the original cause. It's just like creating more effects, patching over things. It's like trying to add clean water to dirty water. You've got to get the dirt out. You've got to get that out. And that is the crying, and that is the tears. And intellectually, I know that. And but I don't know, I haven't lived it enough yet to experience, but I know that I've tried pretty much everything else and it hasn't worked. Using my mind has not worked. Meditating didn't work. Yoga didn't work. I mean, some of these things help, but ultimately I still have most of the grief inside me that I need to have about what happened to me. And that, by not dealing with that, it's also preventing me understanding fully the impact I'm having on others. Because I'm pretty certain that when I feel the pain of what was done to me, when I feel what it felt like every time I was attacked, every time I was criticized, every time I was judged, I'm going to automatically have more compassion and ultimately more repentance. I'll be able to really feel more deeply what I've done to my son, to my friends, to people around me, people in the shops, everyone I've hurt. And that's not going to be pleasant. But I can see that while I refuse to feel my own grief, it's very hard for me to really awaken emotionally fully to my sin, to the things I've done wrong in my hurt that have harmed other people. So that was what I wanted to share, really. Is it's really good, I feel, to us to notice the world's view of things. And I think we know when we watch some of those movies, that's not how things happen, that we don't just sort things out over a short period of time. We can move a little bit forward, but for most of us, we'll end up back in this place where we're aware that there's something stuck in us, and it's demonstrated in our physical illnesses and even our death that we don't deal with stuff. And so, someone can look really successful on the outside, like this woman, but actually it's destroying her internally. And that's what's happening to most of us. So I think this is the really incredible thing about bringing God's truth back on the earth, is that there's something to compare it with. And if I had some idea, at least intellectually, from the teachings of divine truth, what the truth is, I would be completely lost, and maybe in a huge sense of despair or whatever. Having some other information, even though I find it tough to hear and emotionally confusing because it battles against these false beliefs, having that truth gives me hope and keeps me going and gets me, I guess, to hopefully to surrender. That's the point, to surrender. And yeah, just having that truth really, really, really matters. Having the truth in front of me that there's more to me than just my damaged self, that there's a personality in here somewhere that's mostly undiscovered and needs reclaiming. And having that truth, having the truth that there actually is a parent, God, who does delight in us, does see who we really are, does have faith in us to heal, and wants to assist us through the gift of her love. Having that knowledge that God believes I matter, even when I don't, is kind of what gets me out of bed, I guess, in the morning. And it's not a kind of false positivity about it. It's because I don't feel positive all the time. I'm really struggling quite a bit at the moment, but I can use it as motivation or aspiration or inspiration, or as just like, wow, this thing I feel, God's telling me something else. God's telling me I can cope with every emotion possible. So yeah, so that's it really. Sorry, it went on a bit longer than I thought, but I hope it's helpful just for a bit of personal reflection on your own false beliefs, but also the pressure that comes at us from the world around us. And I've listened to a few podcasts of Garbe Mate talking about his new book, The Myth of Normal, and it sounds like an incredible read. I feel like I've already kind of learnt a lot of what he's saying from Divine Truth, but it's really great to have a doctor out there, a specialist in addiction and other things, really talking about this stuff and putting it into the mainstream to help people challenge what they feel is real and what they feel is truthful, and to have some compassion with ourselves about the amount of pressure around us, actually to not grieve, but to patch it over, to skip it over, and to create shiny things, facades and shiny lives, to act as if we're not traumatized and if we're not sad. So, and also to he's linking it with physical disease, just as Jesus has told us before this. So I think it's a really, really great to see somebody actually putting this out mainstream. Well, actually not mainstream, but he's kind of approved by the mainstream, and he gets on podcasts. I guess because Jesus is calling himself Jesus, a lot of people aren't listening because they're put off by by the fact that he's Jesus or saying he's Jesus, and avoiding a huge amount of very precious and truthful information. So I think if you're put off by that, my suggestion, that's don't be put off by that. You need to deal with and eventually feel about the whole Jesus thing, but like the information he's teaching, it's the most precious thing in the world, and very much ties in with this myth of normal, the world's view versus God's truth. Give yourself an anchor on which to heal from. I guess that's what I'm feeling. It's an anchor from which I'm healing, which I can heal from, even though I'm taking a long time and being resistant and terrified of the process at times, the grieving process I'm talking about, I have this anchor now of God's truth, and it's just incredible. So yeah. So anyway, that's my thoughts for the day on that topic. So if you want to watch the film, it's called Luckiest Girl Alive. It is uncomfortable watching. There are rape scenes and some other violent scenes in it, um, but it's a good trigger, put it that way, to bring some stuff up if you want to watch it. So yeah, so just reflect on that. You know what you're believing, what's coming at you from the world around you, and then growing a desire to actually soften to your grief no matter what. I will hopefully be able to come back on here one day, um, I've, and tell you what that's like. The small tasters I've had of that, the small bits of grief I felt, you can feel the release and you can feel the peace and you can feel the rest. It's hard work. It's exhausting holding on to stuff. I'm exhausted. So it's kind of crazy that we do. It's completely insane, really. But we do it for certain reasons. But it's good to look at those reasons. It's good to challenge them. It's good to find out what the truth is. And I don't advise putting walls up, creating walls around your heart. That's done me no good. And then you have to break them all down. So you end up giving yourself more work to do. Those that can stay in this world with an open heart are the ones with real courage. And those that can speak the truth, no matter what anyone else is saying back to them, with you, and say the truth without anger. I'm talking saying truth in a loving way. They're the ones with real courage, and they're the ones to look up to. And we know the world's not working well. It's kind of obvious, but there's so many ways to tune out of that, and it's really good to not tune out of that and to examine what's really going on in our day-to-day lives, what we're believing, what addictions we're feeding, what others are telling us, and coming back to actually a lot of the things that we feel on our own conscience and our own heart. Yeah. So there you go. The Myth of Normal. That's Gabor Mate's book, but this is really about false beliefs, particularly about feeling emotions, versus God's truth, the fact that we need to grieve and we need to cry to release our causal emotions to really be truly free and to understand the truth. Okay, thanks. Bye.